have a snoring problem, chances are you have looked into many different types of snoring treatments at your local drugstore. In fact, the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office has more than 300 over-the-counter snoring treatments on file. But do any of them work? Dr. Craig Schwimmer is the director of the Snoring Center, and he is here today with some insight into these store-bought treatments. Hello, Craig. How are you?
Great, thank you.
Okay, you know, the fact that there's even 300 different types of treatment over the counter means that snoring is a huge issue for many people.
Exactly, and that none of these really work particularly well, because if there were one that worked, you wouldn't need the other 299.
That's a good point. So I bet a lot of your patients, before they come to see you, have tried all 300.
It's amazing what people will try.
What do they try before coming to see you?
Well, you know, one of the old standbys is to sew a tennis ball into the back of your pajama top so that every time you roll over, it hurts and you wake up, which of course is a recipe for a great night's sleep.
I was going to say, that sounds a little bit extreme and painful.
Yeah.
And uncomfortable. Does it work?
To the extent that it keeps you from sleeping well, it'll keep you from snoring, but clearly not a great solution.
Yes, because if you were awake all night, you won't snore. That sounds pretty good.
Right.
All right, but there's other treatments that people try before they come to you also.
Yeah, and all sorts of just crazy stuff. And I brought in, we actually went out and bought some things, and I brought in a couple of them. This is the anti-snore ring, which is appropriately worn on the pinky of the left hand.
Really?
And yeah, and apparently stops you from snoring. I've worn it, and it makes me feel a little bit like Tony Soprano, but other than that, it really doesn't do anything.
Yeah, I would say that's not really addressing the issue, because I'm sure snoring does not come from your pinky. I'm not an expert like you, but I'm assuming that.
Well, no, you're absolutely right. But you know, people hold out hope, and I think that it's evidence of the fact that this is such a big deal for people, that they're so desperate that they're willing to try anything, even just, I mean, crazy stuff. This is the snore-free, germ-resistant good night sleep device, which is a little bull ring that you put in your nose.
Oh.
And I can't for the life of me think of how this would keep you from snoring other than keeping you from sleeping.
Really?
Yeah,
I'm sure does it squeeze and it's uncomfortable?
It squeezes and it keeps you from sleeping because you have this thing in your nose.
Okay, desperate times call for desperate measures. Yeah. And then we even have something that zaps you.
Well, this is one of my favorites. Yeah, you put this on your wrist and you go to sleep at night, and it's got a little battery in there, and when you snore, it zaps you.
Of course it zaps you. That is like a torture device.
Yeah, I mean, who would want that? I mean, and it doesn't work, and I've worn it and actually didn't feel anything, but if it did work,
yes,
who wants to be zapped all night?
That's right. Okay, so but basically these things keep you from sleeping, which is a sure way to prevent snoring, but it's not dealing with the issue of getting a good night's sleep and,
that's exactly right.
Curing the issue.
That's exactly right.
There's been some studies done with the Air Force as well, right?
Yeah, the Air Force Base in San Antonio, actually a couple of otolaryngologists, ENT doctors down there, did a study of 3 of the most popular stop snoring aids and wanted to scientifically assess whether or not they really did anything, and of course they did not. There was no difference in people snoring when they were wearing these devices, when they were not using them. So they're clearly, all of these over-the-counter things are just a waste of money.
Okay, so all of those 3 don't work. Are there anything else that we're doing that's just not working from home?
Oh, there's you know, you name it, and it doesn't work. Now, there are things that people can do, and we've talked about these things before. If you avoid alcohol close to bedtime, that's helpful. Weight loss is a huge factor. If people can lose even 10 pounds, it can make a significant difference. Avoiding large meals close to bedtime, because that decreases heartburn or reflux.
Okay.
And one of my personal favorites, my daughter Bianca made this when she was studying Australia at school.
What is that?
This is a didgeridoo, which is a native Australian wind instrument.
Okay, and are you going to tell me that this is going to help us from snoring?
It actually does. There was actually a scientific paper published which showed that if you learned how to play this, you could improve not only your snoring but your sleep apnea. So if there are any musician snorers out there, this does hold out hope.
Just because it trains you to
uses
use
the muscles.
Part of the...
Yeah, you use the muscles in the back of your throat and strengthen them and tighten them so that they don't vibrate so much.
That is amazing. Have some of your patients come with testimonials that they've worked with things like this?
You know, I've had Australian patients, but none who have learned how to play this.
Yeah, and that looks pretty cool.
Yeah, it's very cool.
Made by a 5-year-old, so that's pretty great. So you're saying there are some steps that we can take at home, like not eating close to bedtime, avoiding alcohol. There are steps we need to take. So not necessarily, you don't need medical attention immediately.
Right, and what we advise people is depending on how much of an issue this is, you can try the conservative things at home. And if you try weight loss and you're unsuccessful, or if you do lose the weight and it's still an issue, then of course, yes, come see us. This is what we do.
Yeah.
But please don't waste your money on ineffective, nonsensical remedies that have no use whatsoever.
Hey, this has been really helpful. So many people, this is an option for them, and it's good to know that Perhaps it's just keeping you awake,
Although,
not
do you like
preventing
this?
the
I mean,
snoring.
I think it's kind of a nice
You are
look.
so Tony
I like
Soprano,
it,
bada
yeah.
bing. All right, Dr. Greg Schwimmer, thank you for being here today. And for more information, log on to snoringcenter.com or call 214-369-2345. Gary, Brenda?